basically, when we think about climate resilient biodiversity programming, again, we think about the resilience of biodiversity focal interest to a couple of things, specifically to climate threats, right? When changing precipitation is impacting a habitat, that like directly is a threat. So for example, if you're working to protect sage grouse, a climate threat would be increasing droughts occurring so that there's less water available in their habitat in the future, right? There's also ways where climate threats impact what humans are doing, and human behavior then increases what would be a more conventional, like human-derived threat. So an example would be for that is, yes, there is droughts occurring, but also humans don't have enough water, and so they're withdrawing more from the aquifer system or the water system, and that means there's even less water left for your sage grouse, right? And in our development work, we see a lot of these kinds of connections quite a bit, where shifting agricultural zones might impinge on areas that used to be too far or too unproductive for agriculture, et cetera. So there are a lot of challenges related to climate impacts. When we talk about biodiversity focal interest, we're talking about the species and the ecosystems that we are trying to protect. So there are two main ways, like big categories of ways that you can adapt to your climate threats, right? One is to change the program parameters so that you can still achieve your goals even though there are biophysical changes. And the other is to adapt your interventions so that you can help the thing you're trying to conserve, right, your biodiversity focal interest, respond to those changes. So what is that, what's the difference between program parameters and interventions? Great question. So in that sage grouse example, right, you're protecting sage grouse. One way that you might adapt the program parameters is to move the geography that you're protecting to a place where sage grouse are more likely to be able to survive, right, to a wetter area. You might even have some things that help transition that protected area so that as the sage grouse habitat moves, your protected area moves with them. That's an example of how you would change your program parameters, meaning kind of the goals of your program. So what about your interventions? What are something that you could do? Well, in the sage grouse example, you might find ways to pump in and provide water so that natural sources don't dry up, or to provide artificial sources of water so that the sage grouse can stay in the habitat that you're protecting and hoping to work in. We can get into, again, a lot more detail on those things. The CMP has a whole bunch of different ways that they categorize all these different kind of changes. We don't need to get into that level of detail for now, but what's interesting is that we really do start thinking about how do we adapt interventions and parameters in order to respond to these climate impacts.